tell me about your sneaker fetish. It's got nothing to do with your background or your book, but maybe a little bit about your background.
Yeah, it does have to do with my background. So I grew up in the 80s, be like Mike, kind of Michael Jordan, one of those kids. And I played basketball, high school and college. And so my first foray into leadership was through sports. I would say I'm an athlete first before a psychologist or a leadership advisor. And once I realized in college that I wasn't going to be like Mike, I had to find a plan B. And it really turned me into the field of leadership and psychology. And I would say that today, one thing that's kept me going the last 20 years in terms of my focus has been what makes great leaders great. And so that started through sports and watching some of the athletes that I aspired to be like, and then being a leader as a point guard on the teams that I played in high school and college, that really kind of led to it. And so I've been collecting shoes since 1994 when Michael Jordan came back to the NBA from his baseball stint. But yeah, that was my entryway into doing leadership as well.
What's your drive?
Yeah. So my drive really comes through some of the life experiences that I went through, both personally and professionally over my career. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was in graduate school. And the way that I was diagnosed, I went through a depressive episode for several months and then had a manic episode for another couple months and then fell into a depressive episode with suicidal thoughts. My father at the time took me to see a psychiatrist. Bedside manner for many doctors are not good. And so within 3 minutes, I was diagnosed and told that you have bipolar, take these meds and come back in 3 weeks. And I outright rejected the diagnosis. I said, how could a graduate student getting his PhD in psychology have a psychological disorder? Led me to living in denial about it for 7 or 8 years, which led to a substance abuse addiction and a lot of other issues, frictions, problems with my family, friends. And so, I've had a career, thankfully, for 20 years doing leadership advisory and management consulting work. But the thing that drives me today, I really feel, I should be dead right now. I've been doing research on emotional intelligence since 1994 when Daniel Goleman came out with his book, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Matters More Than IQ. And that started me on a 10-year journey till I completed my PhD on the idea that relationships include emotions, but it's a separate set of skills as well. And so today, we define emotional intelligence at my firm as the ability to understand your emotions, the emotions of others, and how to manage emotions effectively. And so leaders can use emotions for positive. You can use emotions to elicit, inspiration and to motivate and set goals with your people. And we've all seen leaders who can use emotions to manipulate or to instill fear in their direct reports or team members. Is there a dark side to EQ? And so for me, that got me thinking, okay, if these skills or EQ could be used for positive or negative, are there a separate group of skills or behaviors that leaders use to build lifelong sustainable relationships with people? I want to build a firm that is multicultural, multi-ethnic, and we don't just talk about diversity or offer a program to teach leaders about it. We actually embody it. Diversity and getting bodies in chairs is not really the full focus of what diversity and inclusion should be. It's really about this idea of authenticity, which is the ability to be authentic in acknowledging and accepting that everyone comes from different backgrounds and experiences. And so it's having a positive reception to people who think, act, and behave differently than you do. And so when we talk about inclusivity today, I share with my clients that you want to have people who are different from you around the table on your team, whether that be age, race, sexual orientation, ethnicity. Diversity of thought is the outcome you should drive towards. It leads to greater innovation. It leads to greater problem solving. Teams work more effectively. And as a leader, are you comfortable enough in your own skin to come into work and be your true self? We're in the midst now in the next 5 to 7 years of a transition between different generations of leaders. So you have leaders who are baby boomers and Gen X who are in the senior level roles in organizations right now. And we have an influx of millennials and Gen Z who are starting to come into the workforce or have been. And so you will have a Gen X or baby boomer leader managing a millennial or Gen Z. Things like purpose and things like fulfillment in someone's job and things like joy. Those are things that are universal regardless of what generation you come from. And so leaders of the next 4 to 5 years are going to have to be able to create the conditions for diversity and for inclusion, but they're going to have to go a step further and understand what are the individual needs of their employees. And so this is where relational intelligence comes in a positive way, is For leaders to use this skill set, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So as a leader, are you getting to know your people? How is relational intelligence different than EQ? But relational intelligence, we define that as the ability to successfully connect with people and build strong, long-lasting relationships. So what our research has found, the 5 skills in our framework, and those include establishing rapport, which is the ability to use energy to create initial positive connection with someone. The second skill is called understanding others. And this is being intentional about putting in the time and effort needed to get to know people on a deep level. The third skill we talked about already, embracing individual differences, is the authenticity bucket, with the goal of trying to get diversity of thought with your team. Developing trust is the fourth skill, and that is, again, around vulnerability. It's about this concept that we came up with as well called intentional generosity. And then the most important skill in the framework is cultivating influence. And that's the ability to have a positive and meaningful impact on the lives of others.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And thanks for listening.